Welcome back or welcome to Nain Shorts. For those of you returning, thank you very much for continuing to watch these episodes. I have a lot of fun talking to a camera and in an empty room. But for those of you joining us, hopefully you go back and watch some of the earlier stuff because this is a bit of a progression in reference to my interpretation of the bladed mind and the way that it was given to me, the way that it was given to my instructor, and how it's evolving as we go along. As we said before in the bladed mind, it's really about the individual. We're trying to cultivate just that, a sharp mind, hence the name. It's the process of information and how it goes on up here, how we receive it as individuals, and what we do with it that makes the biggest difference. And today I wanted to talk about something that carried over from our last episode. We talked about blades, because even though we do talk about conceptually of the mind being sharp, we do actually think of the blade itself. So, actual blade. This is a trainer, it's a live blade. But how do we, without holding a knife while swinging a stick, keep in mind the blade mentality? And this is how we do it in the bladed mind. This is how we get the students to start developing their own sense of blade orientation, which many arts talk about. Many arts use the blade to understand, okay, I'm cutting this way, I'm cutting this way, and that's wonderful. We started off at the beginning. When our students first start, even our most basic exercise, one of the details, one of our level 2s that we add to that is blade orientation. Now, some of the students have no sense of holding a blade. So we give them an example. Whenever you hold a blade, your second knuckles line up with the edge itself. Now, that becomes important because there's no edge on a round stick. So they have to pay attention not to the tool, but to themselves. They have to focus on where are they striking? Are they hitting with the side of the blade? If it's an abanico, that is correct. If it's one of our angle 1 strikes or our angle 11 strike, it needs to hit with the blade itself. But because they don't have a reference point in what they're holding in their hand, then they have to really pay attention to the placement of their hand. And that is going to drive the rest of the mechanics. In order to hit with the tip of the blade, I have to cross my center line. I have to turn ever so slightly to make sure that I hit with the blade, that I hit with the blade here, even on our horizontal strikes. My palm is facing up so the blade can hit. This way. My palm is facing completely down and the knuckles are pointing out. This is the orientation that the students then start developing from the very beginning. So every movement they do afterwards is always going to be blade oriented. Because we've said it before, in many other martial artists will tell you the same. We don't walk around with sticks. We're most likely going to have this available for those that carry them. Now, when we talk about blade mentality, we don't teach our students, carry this type of knife, carry this one knife, learn the legalities of it. Always, yes, if you choose to carry a knife. Because again, we're giving the students the tools, developing their mechanics and their understanding of the changes that happened when you change the tool. Because at the end of the day, it's the same hand. It's going to be the same movements. So then we don't have to reteach a whole nother set of lessons. Rather, we just add on to what they already know. We tweak a few things. The details have to change because, a blade is shorter. So the range has to change. The amount of movement has to change. Because if our full chamber is up here and here, and that's a cut. This, short range. If it was long range, it would go all the way through because we have the space to do so. So even that, I'm not moving, I'm already addressing other elements that go into a fight itself. Simply by understanding, I'm trying to cut with a very specific part of my rounded stick. And again, it may sound a little silly, but when we start our students from the very beginning, it becomes innate. It becomes part of their motions. So when you don't have a stick or even a blade, you understand where your hands are, where you are in reference to your opponent, and what are your options, because you're constantly addressing an orientation that isn't even there most of the time. Because eventually, after we do play with sticks for a while, we do put the stick down. And we do pick up blades. Stay, stay. You know what? It's gonna stay there. Whether it's a short machete or even a knife. Now we tell them to do the very same angles. Angle 1, angle 11. Oh, wait. It's the same angle. I don't have to reteach somebody how to cut with the blade, but rather understand the differences that happen. This is slightly longer, so my strikes can be a little wider. But once you get to a blade this size, you have to be close. And because of the nature of the blade itself, you no longer have to drive all the way up here to gain power. You can just do the same angle here, same angle here. Even our horizontals, here to here. Everything still stays close, but now the same angles are tighter. They're shorter movements. They require less power to cut, because you understand that now is the blade cutting, no longer just the blade orientation that you're developing or had developed prior through all your other training. But something interesting happens though, because if with a stick the movements are this large, and if it's a long sword, then that makes sense. But when it's a short sword, it tightens up. So my movements have to tighten up as well. I no longer have to make wider motions. I can tighten everything up. And when we take the blade away and we go back to the stick, all of a sudden the students have a sense that they can make the same movements. The blade mentality still applies. Everything is close to the body. The movements aren't wasted. And just like our earlier videos, we talked about the idea that when your hand is extended, you're at your weakest. It's an easy fulcrum. But when you're close to your body, you are strongest. So if all of your strikes in combination to the entire body's mechanics are delivering everything, you still have power. But we boast that we are close quarter fighters, so if we do not teach our students how to move in a tight space, then we wouldn't be able to consider ourselves close quarter fighters. And as a matter of fact, a couple months ago, there was a barbecue that a friend was throwing. A bunch of martial artists get together, good food. We had a wonderful time. We can't wait to be invited again. But we started talking about this concept. We showed Rick and I our sombrada drill. And the people there seemed a little surprised at how close we were doing our drill, how close we were moving in and out. And then somebody said, wow, I would love to see that with a blade. Being lazy as we are, we didn't want to go across the lawn to pick up a blade. So instead, we used our puño to represent a pacao grip on a blade. And we did the same movements, just as tight, just as fast, just as fluidly as we did with the long stick, without having to change the weapon, because it was no longer about the tool itself, but with the idea that you were playing with at that moment, and the adaptability became almost instantaneous. And that's how we approach this particular idea. And at this point, I would like to show you that drill. So Rick, would you mind joining me?
Coming!
Ooh,
can I borrow this stick?
Yes.
Cool.
I left it there just for you.
Hey everybody.
Alright, so our basic sombrero drill, you've showed it before. Okay, and usually we start off here when we start with the new students, so everything is understood. But as we get to understand better, we no longer have to keep that range. We no longer have to move in and out, because again, We're developing everything to be close to the body. The blade mentality, despite it being a stick, still applies in the mechanics we develop and the force that we create from sheer movement. We haven't even added power to that yet. That was all just mechanics. But you can hear when the sticks strike. So again, if you want to see that with a knife, let's try it. Sorry, I got excited.
He always gets excited. One of those things.
And again, we used just the puño this time. And don't get me wrong, yeah, it looked sloppy. But everything we were doing still coincided with what we learned from that particular drill. We were still effectively moving things around, moving in when we could, striking when we could. Everything became part of what we needed to do. Still in that process. But we were close. Look how far we are from each other. Even if we wanted to, I could still hit him with the tip of my stick. Because the range is this for us. We feel that this is safest. And we project that to our students by letting them know, if somebody's range is here and this is 100%, this is where their punch is strongest, why would you want to be there? Wouldn't it make more sense to be closer? 100% is now behind you. Meanwhile, because you've developed the mechanics to be that tight, you can hurt somebody that close and keep yourself as safe as possible. Thank you very
See you
much.
later. Toodles.
So, as I was saying, the blade idea, it's nothing new, nothing that other people don't do. But in the bladed mind, we use it as a training tool, something to develop what we've always said we're trying to develop in our students, and that is their own mechanics and their own understanding of what they're capable of doing at any range with whatever tool is in their hand. Because again, you may not have a stick, or more likely you won't have a stick, and you may not have a knife if you choose not to. But whatever it is that you do have at hand, you will be able to use and use effectively, because it is the body and the mechanics of the body that you trained, not how to use a tool specifically. At least that's what we teach our students in the Bladed Mind. So, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Nain Short. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with somebody that you think might benefit from it, or might just get a kick of two idiots doing whatever they do up here. Because we do have fun doing this, folks. And we do love sharing with you what we have. If it's beneficial to you, awesome. If it's not beneficial to you, thank you for watching, because that makes you awesome for supporting us the way that you do. So, thank you very much. And I'll see you next week. Till then, 3, 2, 1, cut!